Well, inevitably the economy is going to dominate the looming general election campaign. Let's begin by looking at your economic policies. How would a Liberal Democrat government manage the current public spending deficit? That's a question from Tony P.
We'd first be open and honest about the fact that there are some really, really difficult decisions which will have to be made, and we will spell out what those difficult decisions are in much greater detail than any other political party. So we have already said, for instance, we're the only party in British politics to say that we, in our view, we cannot afford as a country, and nor is it justified, to spend £100 billion over 25 years on the like-for-like replacement for the Cold War Trident nuclear missile system. We're saying that tax credits, I'm on a salary of £63,000, and I'm eligible for tax credits. We think the top 20% of recipients of tax credits should be phased out and concentrate on the people in need. Public sector pay, there needs to be real discipline on that. We're saying that no one in the public sector should receive more than £400 in increased pay for at least the next 2 years. We think that, for instance, some of the government schemes to invest £500 million of your money in the baby bond scheme, which gives £250 to 18-year-olds, we can't afford that anymore. The list goes on, and we will be ever more explicit about the list, but the point is this: we're not going to persuade people that we can start balancing the books and fill this huge black hole that Gordon Brown has filled in our finances, or created in our finances, unless we're open with people about the big ticket items that we're going to have to make savings on. The debate has been dominated by a completely arcane spat between Gordon Brown and David Cameron about the exact timing. Do you do it next Tuesday or do you do it next Thursday? The issue of timing is really not as important as are you going to level with the British people that we're going to have to save a lot of money. We will set out £15 billion worth of savings and cuts between now and the general election, but that doesn't go far enough. The structural deficit is estimated now. And the structural deficit, by the way, it sounds very techie. What it means is the bit that we can't afford in our finances, in other words, which just can't be filled even as growth improves, is about 80 billion. So we need to deal with that now.
So £15 billion isn't very much of that, is it?
It's a big step, it's a big down payment, it's a statement of intent that we're going to be really serious about it.
It's a start, but it's not much. I was at your speech.
It's so much further than any other party.
Look, I was at your speech, you gave to the City recently. You said Liberal Democrats believe we may need to revisit both the timetable and the level of savings required. It looks like you've just given yourself a get-out clause, haven't you? You're trying to reassure voters, and there's only so much reassurance you can actually do.
No, it's actually quite the reverse. It might be more serious than we think. What I was actually trying to signal was that our working assumption is that in order to meet the government's own declared target of halving the structural deficit over 4 years, you need to start doing what we're doing, which is setting out cuts of a considerable amount. I mean, you turn your nose up at 15 billion. That's the biggest detailed list of savings and cuts from any party in British politics for years. What I was saying was, who knows? It might get a lot worse. I hope it won't happen. Of course I hope it won't happen, because it's going to be very, very difficult for us as a nation if you get a run on the pound, or if you get a lack of, or a crisis of confidence in the markets in the UK PLC. But we're starting on the assumption that if you even want to do what the government has said it wants to do, you're going to have to go a lot further. And by the way, what you certainly can't do is what the Conservatives have done, which is this bizarre mix of sort of tub-thumping scaremongering, basically saying that unless people vote for the Conservatives, their mates in the city will tear the house down. It's a sort of threat, really. It's holding a gun. And then at the same time say that you're going to add billions and billions of pounds to the NHS and not explain how many teachers, how many soldiers, how many social workers, how many policemen are going to have to be cut and lose their jobs to fund that wholly unfunded commitment. So I do think, of course we haven't crossed all the T's and dotted the I's. We've gone so much further, and so much credibly further than any other party.
Okay, 2 questions here. Chaz1 asks, do you believe that ordinary people should be treated as importantly as the bankers who, through bad management, have thrown our country into austerity for at least 2 generations, and they still receive high wages and bonuses? And Alamolicious wants to know, should banks be allowed to pay the bailout money back without paying any interest on it?
I think it's an outrage. It's an economic and moral outrage, the way that the greed of the bankers of the City of London has basically held a gun to the head of the rest of the British economy, has had a direct knock-on effect. So young people now find that they can't find work, homes are being repossessed, People are very, very scared about their economic prospects. And what's happened to the bankers? They're still raking in the bonuses. And that's why we're the only party in British politics, and both David Cameron and Gordon Brown refuse to do this, to say the banks should be split up. Never, ever again should we allow this kind of freewheeling casino banking to hold people's everyday savings in high street retail banks hostage. And we would split up retail high street banking from investment banking. And until that happens, we would say to the banks that they have to pay a 10% premium levy on their profits.
It's a hard line you're taking, isn't it?
It's a very hard line.
It's not popular with members of city firms who I've spoken to.
Of course it isn't.
They said you're talking down the economy by comparing Britain to Iceland, by supporting this 10% levy on taxpayer-supported banks' profits. Aren't you just going to stifle the recovery by scaring off the city?
Hang on, let's get the horse before the cart, dare I say it. How did this recession start? It was started by banks and bankers basically fueled by greed and deeply irresponsible business models, lending money to people who they know couldn't pay it back, lending money which they didn't have, which they'd borrowed from others, and creating this sort of pyramid, this castle in the sky, right? The whole thing has imploded. We, the taxpayers, are now paying billions of pounds to bail these people out. And I think it is not, I think it's a luxury, I don't think it's a choice. I think it's an absolute necessity that we protect our economy from ever being held hostage by a vested interest in that way again. And it's not active retribution. No economy is going to work properly. It's a bit like blood flowing around a body, unless you've got cash flowing around the economy. And what's happening is that because the banks basically want to hoard money at the moment rather than lend it to small businesses and households so that they can start basically doing what they want to do again, to add insult to injury, they're not even lending money to people. There's £47 billion less lending last year than the year before. So I just think we have no choice. We cannot ever again allow our economy to be jeopardised in the way that it was.